Spend time with people that are doing the things that you want to do. Spend time with people that look the way you want to look, act the way you want to look. That's how you change your life. It's all about the environment. The environment always wins.
Yes.
And so surrounding yourself with people, and if you look at like groups of friends, I mean, even at a very young age, you look at like friends, they typically all look the same. Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of I Love Being Sober, sponsored by Camelback Recovery, Arizona's preferred mental health and addiction treatment option to help newcomers on their path to recovery. If that's you or someone you know, then you're in the right place. Because my name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of Camelback Recovery, here in the always sunny and always sober Phoenix, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people to stop their suffering and continue on their path to recovery. Today, we're thrilled to have with us a true powerhouse in the world of nutrition and fitness. She's a triple board certified nutrition expert and a fitness Hall of Famer. Her passion for the healing power of nutrition is not just a profession, but a mission to revolutionize how we view aging and longevity. Our guest has an impressive track record of entrepreneurial success, having launched 3 multi-million-dollar businesses, including a high-earning personal brand. She's the driving force behind the Mindshare Collaborative, a leading professional community in the health industry known for launching numerous New York Times bestsellers, PBS specials, and successful seven-figure brands. Her influence extends to television and media as well. She's co-hosted TLC's Freaky Eaters and was the go-to nutrition expert for Dr. Phil's weight loss challenges. Her expertise has been showcased on various platforms, including PBS, Dr. Oz, Rachael Ray, Access Hollywood, and The Today Show. An accomplished speaker, she's captivated audiences of over 10,000 and shared stages with luminaries like Tony Robbins, Seth Godin, Nichols, Gary Vaynerchuk, Dr. Hyman, Buettner, and Mary Morrissey. Join us as we dive into a conversation with the incredible JJ Virgin and explore the transformative power of nutrition and wellness. JJ, welcome to the show.
I am so excited to be here, and I'm so happy that you are bringing nutrition and fitness into this conversation.
Absolutely. I love it. And I'll tell you, health and wellness, nutrition, fitness, biohacking, etc., have all been a huge part of my journey through recovery. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because it's a massive compliment to everything that I talk about and everything that I'm about.
Well, I love what you're doing because I will tell you, you don't know this. I was listening to all that and I thought, gosh, I was thinking back to when I lived in Palm Desert and I had a wellness center there. And we had a lot of people who had gone to Betty Ford. And while I was, one of my clients relapsed and I went to see her in Betty Ford. And I remember being, first of all, very frustrated because they took all of her supplements away.
Right.
I was like, wait a minute, wait.
Right.
Hold on. So they took all her supplements away. And then I go in there and it's like a candy fest in there.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, this is like the exact opposite of what I think we need to get your chemical balance back on track. So yeah, hopefully things have shifted since then. And, I know at your place, these things don't happen. So I'm really, really loving that you pull all of this in because it's key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, food, nutrition, sleep, exercise, like all of it, it all works together with mental health, addiction, depression, anxiety, like all of it. So,
yep.
So yes. So the title of this episode is going to be Aging Powerfully. So what does aging powerfully mean to you?
So it's interesting. I think when we were together, I turned 60 and I got myself all fired up for this birthday.
Right.
And so here I was like a year and a half before this birthday, planning for this birthday, planning that this was going to be my most powerful decade to date. Not saying that's going to be my most powerful decade, because, then there's going to be the 70th. We'll see what
Right.
happens.
Right.
Right? Like, it's always additive, right? It's exponential. So, and I'd heard this quote, Mark Hyman told me about this study that was, that said that if you are positive about aging, you live 7.5 years longer than people who don't. And as we know in what we do, mindset is key. Like, thoughts create. You aren't going to blow past your perceptions of reality. So I doubled down on that idea that I was going to be super fired up about aging. And so I decided to get into the best shape of my life at 60. And the reality is I've never really been out of shape. I started lifting weights when I was 16. And then I, of course, brought my husband with me.
Right.
And so the first thing we did was go and get a DEXA scan. Now, here's what happens as we age. And I say this happens, but it does not have to. Left unchecked, starting at around age 30, the way that we build muscle shifts, and we have to rely on something on our diet and actual exercise more than hormones. So starting around age 30, if you are not doing what you need to do actively in terms of the protein you need and the resistance training you need, you start to lose muscle. And it can be, 3 to 8% a decade. It starts to double at age 60. But that is actually not the big problem. The big problem is, along with that muscle, you lose strength. And the best way to explain that, I was always the jar opener in my house. And a couple of years ago, I went to open a jar and I realized I couldn't open the jar. And I went to hand the jar to my husband. And then I went, wait a minute, hold on. This is not just, I can't open the jar. This is a oh crap moment.
Right.
But that's not even the biggest problem. And you'll see this. I mean, you could see this just by looking at our current president. Shuffling, going slower, tripping, you lose your power. And I believe that the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. And if we start to lose our physical power, we start to just lose our power overall. And so I looked at this and went, all right, if what we're really losing as we age is that type 2 muscle fiber, and as we start to lose that, it starts to impact everything. It starts to impact your confidence, how you show up. And I thought, what if we could flip that? Let's just flip that script and let's start to train to age powerfully. And so that's what aging powerfully means to me is what do we need to do to show up at our strongest, most powerful self in our 60th, 70th, 80th, and if we want to think about what we want to do, say, at 95, well, we better be training for it and really building a strong foundation. It's just like retiring. If you knew you wanted to retire at 70, you wouldn't wait till you were 65 and go, okay, I better save something.
Right.
You'd go, I'm going to start really building this right now so I can compound as much interest as possible so I can live the life I want to live. It's exactly the same with your fitness.
I love it. I love that answer. And by the way, you look fantastic at 60 years. Are you 60 right now?
I'm about to be 60. Wonderful. And as you know, I had a luggage pulling injury. So I currently have a hurt elbow. So I'm doing a little bit of a lean forward because I just had prolotherapy. So, but again, right before I went in today to go get prolotherapy, I thought, all right, well, I'm not going to be able to do anything with my upper body for 2 weeks. So I better do battle ropes, pull-ups, and burpees and snatches and medicine ball throws before I go in. Because I was like, it's not like I can hurt it worse at this point.
Right. You got 2 weeks to recover, or however long, right?
Right. I was like, now I'm kind of going, well, that probably wasn't the smartest move. But the types of things that I incorporated in are what we have to think of as we age. Walking in a little Pilates is not going to cut it as you age.
Right. And I love that. And we were at the Wizard Academy together, and I remember you. I mean, there's everything about you. You really walk the walk, which is so important to aging powerfully. We stopped by Whole Foods before I drove with you from the airport. We went to Whole Foods and you picked up the food to make sure that you had the nutrition and the food that was going to fuel your body, the food that you needed. And then you were exercising and you were getting in your fitness at the little gym there as well. So you were doing all of those things. It's a lifestyle. And if you want to continue being young as you get older, you've got to continue doing those things. And I also, the other thing that we talked about before we hopped on the show was how mental, emotional, spiritual health is, it ties into physical health. So I just think about, you talk about Joe Biden and he's walking around confused, and it's like, to continue with the physical exercise, it's going to absolutely affect you mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, what do we know about exercise? And here's the thing, Tim, I started as an exercise physiologist, and I was all the way up in a PhD program, and I had sort of run out of exercise physiology classes to take. This was like, in the 80s. And so it was supposed to be exercise physiology, nutrition, and aging. And I got really into the nutrition side of things. Mm-hmm. And I sort of felt like at the time, like exercise was sort of, I don't know, we were like the peasants, right? And everything was about nutrition and integrative medicine. So I kind of left my roots over there and came over to the nutrition and functional medicine and hormones and all the cool stuff. But as you start to look at aging and you look at everything from brain function, bone health, insulin sensitivity, immune function, I mean, ability to move, all of it, exercise is the single thing. If you look at all the hallmarks of aging, it's the one thing, it's the one lever that will move all of those rocks, that one. And, we talk about brain health. My son had a massive traumatic brain injury. One of the first things we started getting him to do was exercise, because we knew that we could actually regenerate his neurons with exercise. It raises BDNF alpha. You have someone who is depressed, exercise, right? Mm-hmm, anxious, yeah. Exercise. Like when I was in the hospital with my son, because he was in a coma and in the hospital for months, one of the first things I did was start to run up and down the hospital stairs, because I had to blow off that steam. Right. I was like, this is going to go somewhere. It's like a wild animal, it has to shake it off, right? I was like, it's better be shaken off, otherwise I'm going to blow up. Which was fun at that hospital. I started to notice, like I started a thing where all of a sudden there's a whole lot of people running up and down the stairs.
Down the stairs. I love it. Right,
it's great.
Yeah, and I just think about like I've been in recovery since 2011, and that was kind of a period of time, like that was a point in time when I really shifted to exercise and fitness and health, and I feel better today than I've ever felt. And I know lots of other people that are in recovery. It's kind of the same thing. I don't know. It's weird. We get into recovery and now we're all focused on health and wellness and fitness and exercise. And oh
my God, you health nuts.
Yeah, remember when we were all like, we all become health nuts, and we're into biohacking, and we're into lifting weights, and we're into cold plunging, and we're into red light, and we're into all that stuff.
It's so funny because literally, I started getting into this at age 12. And started going to the library and reading nutrition books and teaching dance class. And for decades, it has been, if you're into this, you're like a weirdo, like a health nut, as if this is a bad thing. I'm like, I really can't understand for the life of me, why would it be bad to be into personal development? That's the other one that they kind of make scoff at. Or bad to be into your health. I mean, if you're not interested in your health, what else is there? Like, because you don't have that, it just doesn't matter. And if you think about it, when I was on Freaky Eaters, we would have these people who would only eat one food or predominantly eat one food. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it wasn't salmon.
Right.
Never once was it salmon or broccoli. Nope. It was like cheese or potatoes or sugar, right?
Right.
And so we would have to put lateral activities in and things that they could do so they couldn't do the other thing. And when you think about it, if you're shifting your identity, because people often ask me, Tim, how do I make sure once I've gotten to a place where I'm healthy and fit that I stay there? And I go, well, you just find fitter friends. And so you think about it coming into a recovery. How do you stay there? Well, replace all of this with all these healthy activities, with hanging out with people who are now going to, CrossFit or running a marathon or whatever the thing is that floats your boat that's out in the fitness world. Take healthy cooking classes, right? Just replace it, swap it out.
Yeah. Spend time with people that are doing the things that you want to do. Spend time with people that look the way you want to look, act the way you want to look. That's how you change your life. It's all about the environment. The environment always wins. And
Yes.
so surrounding yourself with people, and if you look at like groups of friends, I mean, even at a very young age, you look at like friends, they typically all look the same.
Well, what they found about obesity, and then I'll share a hack that I found about exercise. What they found about obesity is that it is contagious. Just like your income tends to be the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Right.
Turns out obesity is the same, but it doesn't matter if that friend's next door to you or across the country.
Huh.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
And I figured out something pretty interesting to do, because they always say, don't be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
And so my whole thing is, okay, don't be the oldest person in the room. I go into these fitness classes and I look for the class, like either the hot yoga or the HIIT class, where I go in and I'm like, I could actually probably be everybody's grandmother, not just their mom. Right? We go into those classes because you're going to walk in and it's really interesting as an adult to go into a place where you don't really know what to do. You're going to do it wrong. You're going to look stupid. You're not going to be good, right? There's so much mental stuff around that's amazing, that pushes you out of your comfort zone. So that's another one that I've been working on that I think is kind of a cool one to think about, because it's really easy to get into ruts with all this stuff and not continue to progress. And especially if you want to age powerfully, you can't just continue to do the same thing. You actually have to continue to progress.
Right. And I think it's always looking for different opportunities. So how, in your opinion, how would someone continue progressing?
Oh, there's all sorts of different ways to continue to progress. So just in a resistance training routine, you can progress by changing the tempo, changing the sets, changing the reps, increasing the weight, and changing the difficulty of the movement. In your exercise overall, you can change up things. If you're like, someone who does the Peloton all the time, like I just got a sprint treadmill, alternate with that. If you've been doing, regular yoga, go to hot yoga, change things up. And one of the things I find by traveling a lot is that I have to change things up. So I'm always, shifting things around, but getting that variety in there. I just did an interview yesterday with Tony Horton, who created P90X. And that was his whole thing, is like, you just get a bunch of variety. Now, in exercise, you do also want some consistency as you're building muscle. Like I like to think of things in 8 to 12 week segments for the resistance training thing, of where you're really pushing specific exercises and increasing. But there's so much variety beyond that you can do with, the different types of exercises, like going to a CrossFit class, et cetera. So, you continue to progress by doing what exercise, the true definition of exercise is, which is doing more than what your body's used to. So it has to adapt to get stronger.
Right.
And that's why, activity overall is important, but walking, unless you're very deconditioned, is not exercise, it's activity. We want to do a lot of it. Naturally, we should, but your body's not adapting. Right? From that walk you just did, unless you sprinted up hills, it's not adapting.
Yeah. And I love, what I personally like to do is I like to do different activities. Like, for example, I did a couple of half marathons last year. I hiked the Grand Canyon. I did rim to rim to rim. I'm cycling. I'm doing the Tour de Scottsdale, a little cycling race here in a couple of weeks. So it's like doing different exercises that way, and having different, for me, I like having a goal. I like having a race. I like having an event or something like that I'm training for. And then a lot of times I like to hire a coach too, because, I think
it's fantastic. And there's a couple takeaways from what you just said. The first takeaway is, what motivates you.
Right.
So you find a thing that motivates you. And then if you don't know quite how to do it the best way, you find someone who does and you hire them. I've been working on, like, the first thing I worked on over the last couple of years was getting my meditation solid. So that was a biggie for me. And I did that. And then once I got that one and I started monitoring HRV, then I started to work on increasing my strength and hypertrophy. Then once I got that, I'm now really working on power. So, and I'll just track these things, for a while there, I was working on making sure I was getting the step count I needed in. So, and again, one by one until that becomes habitual, and then adding in the next thing.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question now that I should have asked at the beginning. What gives you the right to claim you are an expert on aging powerfully?
That is interesting. So one, because I'm 60. It is interesting. I've been in the field since I was, I literally started teaching dance class in my teens. And then I went off to UCLA on a theater scholarship and started teaching aerobics. And then someone wanted me to come to their house, and all of a sudden I'm personal training. And then I was like, well, I guess I better start learning really what's going on. And that's when I went to grad school for exercise science. But I think when you look at this, there's so much to really being an expert. There's both the scientific rigor and understanding, knowing the science and knowing not just the research, but how your body works. But then there's also the field experience. Because what I learned in school was that what we were being taught didn't necessarily work in the field.
Right.
I'm like, well, this is great in a lab where you have students that have to come in, but in the real, out in the wild over there, this has got to work. And so my best teacher has always been being out in the wild, being out in the field, really understanding what's going on. So I think having the research, and every day now I'm going through the research. I'll tell you, Tim, I feel like I know less now than ever, because there's such an explosion of research all the time that you have access to. I mean, you used to have to go into the library and the stacks and dig through stuff. Now you can, like, every single day, there's something new out. You could spend all your time doing that. So it's understanding the mechanisms, pathways, staying up on the research, but also having the field experience and actually not only doing it yourself, but doing it with enough people over time so that you understand, what all has to happen for someone to be successful. Because you can outline the best program, but if someone's not going to do it, it doesn't matter. There's a person on the other side that actually has to do something with this. And then the other side of it, when you really look at what it takes to age powerfully, I really look at this with 3 pillars and then something underlying it. And I like to simplify things down and major in the majors before going into the minors. One of my arguments with biohacking is I feel like people jump into that before they've majored in the majors. And I'm like, all right, you're biohacking, but your diet sucks.
Right.
You're biohacking, but you're not actually moving. You're trying to figure out how to only sleep 5 hours a night. No, just get some good quality sleep, stop that. So, the first thing that always has to underlie all of this is mindset. I was fortunate at age 30 to work with one of the top mindset coaches in the world, arguably, and that's where I really got dialed in on mindset. But then the 3 real pillars are, food, what you eat, how you fuel your body, then the supplements that you put alongside that, how you move, both exercise and activity, and then how you recover. And that's everything from stress, sleep, all the biohacking tools we could do. And so I've been fortunate to really go deep into all of those areas and study them. But again, I always like to take the high level view. And before we start to worry about which supplement you should take, it's like, let's just make sure you're actually eating enough protein.
Right. Protein first.
Protein first. And then, you're sitting here worried. We'll get people like, okay, should I be doing, red light and this? I'm like, let's just make sure you're actually moving.
Right.
How much movement are you, you're worried about, the power exercise you're doing, but you're getting 4,000 steps in a day.
Right.
So I think one of the things we really have to look at is when you major in the majors. And right now I'm actually working with someone who has about 200 pounds to lose. So we're on this journey and we're down 10, 11 pounds right now. Just started, been at this a month. And it was funny because there's a team that wanted to get involved and they're all supporting him. And I'm like, okay, but we are not going to all throw, because everyone had things they wanted him to do. I go, everyone stop.
Right.
Stop it. All we're going to start with are the steps and the protein. Once we get the steps and the protein, okay, now we're putting a CGM on, like one by one by one. We're going with the biggest pillars, and then we keep going down and down and down.
Right.
And, and seeing what we can correct, because so many things correct just when you eat protein first, get your optimal protein in, add in non-starchy vegetables, a little fruit. When you move more and get in that 8 to 12,000 steps, and then start to add that resistance training in, when you make sure you're prioritizing sleep and getting your quality sleep. I do not believe in this whole idea of hacking your sleep. It's ridiculous. When you do something mindful to manage your sleep, your stress, and getting community, so many things fixed just with that. Right?
Yeah, it's like everything, and this is what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I believe. It all feed, and this is my experience. They all feed off of each other. I eat healthy. I want to exercise. I exercise. I want more sleep. I'm able to go to sleep. I get up early. I'm able to have a good, solid day. Like everything kind of feeds off of each other. So to your point, things correct themselves if you just work on the main things first.
Yeah. Yeah. Do the main things first. And here's what's interesting. Like one poor night of sleep, this, I know this, I've experienced it. This is why with travel and time zone adjusting, I'm like crazy with how I go through it to make sure that this doesn't happen. Because one poor night of sleep, you're more insulin resistant, your ghrelins up, you're hungrier. So, your cortisol's up. So not only you're hungry, you're going to be better at storing fat around your belly. You're more insulin resistant, worse at burning fat off. You're tired. You don't want to exercise. You're going to want sugar. It's like the whole thing. One night. That's one night.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking with a good friend yesterday, my friend Ben, and he's not an alcoholic. He's not in recovery. He drinks like a normal person. And he had something happen to him, and he was in the hospital for a couple of weeks back in January, and he hasn't drank alcohol since. And he's saying everything is so much better. He sleeps better. He feels better. He feels smarter. He's in a better mood. And just everything about him, he's like, man, I don't even think I want to go back to drinking at all because I feel so much better about myself.
It's the same with sugar. It's the same with moving. It's all of them.
Yeah, you get one night of bad sleep, and that's kind of where that's what made me think of that is, if you drink alcohol, you're going to have a pretty bad night of sleep.
Yeah, you're going to have a bad night's sleep.
Yeah, it leads to all the other things.
And here's what's great about all this, because when I'm working with people, I don't want to say, hey, you can never eat that again.
Right.
What you start to do is you become curious.
Right.
And if you're watching your metrics, you're watching your sleep, maybe you're wearing a CGM, you're looking at your body composition over time, and you go, wow. When I eat late before bed, look what happens.
Right.
Or when I have more than one glass of wine, look what happens. Or even one glass of wine. So you just go through, if I have coffee too late in the day, look what happens.
Right.
And so you just get curious because, hey, if we know you eat late at night, your blood sugar is hijacked, you don't sleep well, you wake up, you feel like crap, you don't do it again.
Yeah, it's just getting curious and paying attention. And hey, guess what? Sometimes I forget and I have a cup of coffee at 4:00 in the afternoon, and then I lay in bed and I'm not able to sleep. And it's like, oh man, that was a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I just continue learning, and then I test and I learn, and there's a reminder.
But I think it's curious is the important word, because especially for women, we actually don't act curious. We act judgmental. We're like our own mean girlfriend sitting on our shoulder going, can't believe you did that, right? So that's why I always say curious, because, I love Dr. Joe Dispenza of, forgive your beautiful self.
Right.
Like slip-ups are going to happen in all sorts of things, and there are times when you might eat a piece of birthday cake. It's your birthday. Right. And you want to, and like, fine, it's like,
that reminds me of the in the 4 Agreements. I don't remember which chapter it is, but he talks about, as humans, we judge ourselves over and over, and we beat ourselves up over and over and over again for decisions.
Everything. I was going to say for everything.
For everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, it's like, let it go.
Mm-hmm. If you could only choose 3 things to improve how we age, what would they be?
They're not what you think they are. Okay, so first one, have a purpose. I just interviewed Chip Conley, who wrote, it's something like Lessons for Midlife, and he has the Modern Elder Academy. He's the guy who was brought in by Airbnb, the founders who were then 26 years old, and he had a hospitality company, and they brought him in, and he was 52, and they called him the Modern Elder. And he like didn't speak tech, and he's like, what am I going to do here? Anyway, he said something that I think is so profound. He goes, as we age, it's not about being respected. It's about being relevant. And I'm in a group with some of the top transformational leaders in the world. And some of them are in their 70s and 80s. And what I see them struggling with is that very thing. They've sold their companies. They're like, how do I stay relevant? And so it's what is your calling? What is your purpose? What are you here to do? This whole idea of retirement, I just don't even remotely understand this.
Right.
Like if you're on a mission, if you're a mission-driven entrepreneur, or just a mission-driven human, you're put here to make a dent in the universe. You've got something to do. Well, that's going to keep you going. So that's the first one. Have a purpose, and you're continuing to learn and grow and, stay relevant. The next one is have an amazing group of humans. Like have that group of friends, family. That's the other big one. Like when you look at the blue zones, everyone tries to make the blue zones about the diet. I'm sorry. You look at the different parts of the world, you're not going to tell me that Sardinians are vegans. Right. You're not convincing me. No way. They eat cheese and cured meat. Right. So, what do they have in common? The three top things: purpose, relevance, right? Community.
Human connection.
Yeah, that community, that connection. I mean, loneliness is like an epidemic. And then the third one is they move a lot. I'll tell you, my mom just passed at 93. And what was so great, like up until maybe 2 months before she passed, when I was like, I'm taking your car keys, Mom, because you're driving on the sidewalk. But up until then, she lived up a flight of stairs. Her house, there was no way to navigate the house without having to walk up this flight of stairs. She did all of her groceries. She did all of her housekeeping. She was up and down and up and down and up and down. She was very active. She walked every day. And she had a purpose because she took care of my brother, who my adopted brother is profoundly mentally ill. So she took care of my brother. She had a purpose, and she had this amazing group of friends, very connected to her golf country club. So, those three things alone make a massive difference. Think if a doctor wrote a prescription for that. Right.
Yeah. Purpose, community, and then they move.
So because I just was reading on the news thread, they go, the boomers are wanting to stay in their houses, but they're not realizing what they need to do to prepare themselves for aging. And I'm like, what's that? To get the little like elevator thing that goes up the stairs, that stair I go, no, you know what we should do is once you turn 40, you should be forced to live in a 3-story house for the rest of your life. Right. And by the way, put the food at the top and the bathroom at the bottom.
Right.
What would happen there?
Right. Yeah. Being held accountable.
Yeah, it'd be perfect. I mean, now that I think about that, that's like a perfect thing. When I moved into the house we're in, it's 2 stories. The second story is the guest rooms, our offices, and this gym we built. And I was going to bring like a fridge up here and an espresso maker and all, the things that I would love. And then I went, wait a minute. No, I'm not either. I'm going to make myself go up and down those stairs multiple times a day to get all that stuff. I'm not going to bring it up here and sit on my butt. And I'm sitting here in a studio, but it's a stand-up desk. So I would be standing, except for this elbow. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I have a walking pad right next to me so that for my meetings, I can walk while I'm taking the meetings. So, look for how can you incorporate more movement into your life? Can you have, walking meetings? Can you have a walking pad? These things are really inexpensive now to do your Zoom calls on. What can you do to incorporate and move more? I've become crazy about tracking my steps. And, with 8,000 being my bare minimum, I do not get to go to bed if I have not hit those. Even if I was traveling or something else where it was really hard to get the steps, I have to get the steps.
That's funny. You're talking about living in a 3-story house. I'm in the process of looking for a new home or a new place to live. And one of my criteria is it needs to be just 1 floor. Like I do not like walking up and down stairs. I get enough exercise. I get my steps, and I don't need, but it is it's like, okay. Well.
There actually was a recent study. I don't know how the heck they did this study with rhesus monkeys, and what they were correlating was rhesus monkeys aging and their ability, how quickly they could go upstairs. I'm like, how the hell did they get those monkeys up the stairs? It's like, ow, that's me, my elbow hurt. But yeah, so it is interesting, but speed of stair climbing, and you see people stumbling, like think of the president on Air Force One, stumbling on the steps, right? So it matters. So maybe you should look for a 2-story house is my takeaway for you.
I will consider it. Maybe I won't rule it out immediately. Maybe I'll actually consider it. Okay, so you may or may not have an opinion on this, but how does alcohol impact how we age?
You know what? This is one that I find very confusing. Obviously we know that, alcohol can disrupt sleep. And alcohol can contribute to visceral adipose tissue. However, you look at the blue zones, and then alcohol is this common factor in the blue zones. So you got me. It's a big head scratcher to me with the whole alcohol thing. Obviously, if you're an addict, alcohol's an out.
Right.
But
it's not going to help you age.
this would not help. But whether it helps. I'm going to turn off this. Something is clicking here. Whether it helps otherwise, gosh, you listen to Andrew Huberman's thing and you're like, but then you look at some of the other studies, you're like, got me. The jury is.
They used to say, a glass of wine a day is good. And then more recently I've heard, well, that's just marketing. It's really not good. Alcohol is not good for you at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I don't know. I know there's both sides, so I think for someone who's an addict, that's a non-issue anyway. And if someone's not an addict, would I say, hey, this is something you should start for your health? No, I would never say that.
Right.
So, but if you are someone who is not an addict and you have red wine here and there, it doesn't seem to be a problem with the research, but it's up in the air. So I don't know. It's when I go, I don't know.
Right. And there's some people that say there's zero benefit to alcohol, I guess, other than just having that glass of wine to make you.
There's a couple benefits, but they're not probably the benefits I think are, number one, it tends to be something where people are out socializing. So there's the benefit of you're relaxing, you're socializing. Right. There's also the benefit of alcohol can raise GABA, help you calm down a bit. So if you're stressed, it can help. How much really impacts you, because you go over the little bit that would do, and all of a sudden now you're creating blood sugar issues and toxicity. So my big recommendation is, if you're not drinking, don't start for your health. Right. I don't think it makes sense to do it. But if you are someone who enjoys red wine, which I am that person, I grew up outside of Napa Valley, and literally where I grew up, we could go to Napa Valley and they didn't card us.
Wait, where did you grow up?
I grew up in El Cerrito, California. So
okay, right. I've heard you say that. Okay.
Yeah. And my dad, I'm adopted. My dad was a definite functioning alcoholic. So I always grew up going, I'm not doing that, but I don't have the genetic piece of this at all. I can drink, I cannot drink. I don't really care. And I love a glass of red wine, but I'm not going to go through my wine thing and drink everything. So I can take it, I can leave it. It's like, if I'm going to a nice restaurant, I'm having some, I don't really think too much about it. But again, my general rule of thumb is, if you are going to drink something like dry farm wines, which is the clean ones or European ones. And if you're not drinking, don't start for your health. I don't buy that this is like a great additive thing.
What's your opinion on organic versus non-organic, grass-fed beef versus corn-fed beef? Do you have an opinion on that? I've heard Dave Asprey talk about how he won't even eat corn-fed beef. He'll only eat grass-fed. What's
So
your
it's interesting. I just did an omega quant test, and this is what you can do to find your omega-3 index. And so when we look at, when we eat food for the macro and micronutrients. If we look first macro, we have protein, fat, and carbs. And then in protein, they break down into amino acids. In fat, they break down into specific different fatty acids. And then in carbs, we've got all the polyphenols, the fiber, and then the sugar, right? And different types of sugar. What we're really looking at when we're talking about grass-fed or wild or pastured, the biggest thing that's impacted there is the fatty acid profile. And what we look at is when there's one other piece too, is it tends to be not nutrient dense like it was in the wild. A lot of it, we might have things like pesticides, herbicides, some of the different antibiotics, added hormones, growth hormones, et cetera. So we got all that garbage in there, and you are what you eat. So you've got two different issues when you're eating non-grass fed, non-wild, is you're getting all that stuff that they're going to use to keep animals in close proximity. Plus you've got a stressed animal, and there's a thing called xenohormesis where we get the stress hormones from the animal, which means if an animal is scared, frightened, and stressed out, you're getting that in the meat.
Right.
So there's all of that. So that's on the meat protein side. On the fatty acid side, we've really messed with the fatty acid profile, and then realize a lot of these toxins, like the pesticides in the feed. I mean, you look at, they're not doing non-GMO feed. So we're getting corn and soy and wheat and candy, by the way. I think you probably heard that they like do all this like out of date candy and crap and give it to these animals. So You're getting all this stuff with different types of inorganic garbage things we shouldn't get in our body that are forever chemicals that are now stored in the fat, because that's where we store fat. Now we're eating the fat. So what you want to focus, and that is why it's a problem with these, is number one, the stuff stored in the fat, but number two, the fatty acid profile. If you look back to, 500 years, 1,000 years, 5,000, 10,000 years ago, we had a different fatty acid profile. Our omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was 4-1. Now it's about 20-1, which puts us into a more pro-inflammatory state. Our membranes are stiffer. Our blood doesn't flow as well. We want to be back to that 4-1, and we want to have an omega-3 ratio that's about 8 to 12%. You can test this. It's like $50. It's called an omega quant test. You can Google it, do a blood spot, send it in, and look at all of this. Here's what I'll tell you about all of this is, because this fits into the seed oil conversation too. I fall in a place where I also have to live in the real world. And I think that we can get too crazy.
Right.
And so, at home, we get Butcher Box, which is all grass-fed, pastured. We buy pastured chicken and pork. We have all wild fish. When I'm out to dinner, I try to get wild fish, grass-fed, etc. Does it always happen? No. Do I get it 75, 80% of the time? Yes. At home, I do all good oils. When I'm out, I try to avoid, I have them bring me extra virgin olive oil if I'm doing a salad dressing. Usually I don't even do salads out because it's usually just a Sunday. They put all this garbage on there. I go, okay, I got 5 calories of arugula, and I got this, cheese and crouton, like all this garbage, which I would never order a salad like that. But, you try to get clean vegetables, and they've got oil on them. So I try to be careful when out, but I also want to live in the world. And so I just did my omega quant, and I've got, a 12% omega-3 ratio. I've got a 4-1 AA to EPA rate, like all my stuff, my trans fats were low. Everything was perfect. And I still can navigate and live out in the world and not have to be, I'll never eat that. So, if there's a grass-fed steak on the menu, I'm choosing that. But do I occasionally go wild and have a corn-fed steak? Yes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yes, but I'd say it's the exception, not the rule, but I'm also going to live in the world, and sometimes, that's the way it works.
Right. So the takeaway that I got from what you just said is basically I want to feel good, and if I want to feel good, then I'm going to eat grass-fed, wild-caught fish, pastured, because all the other things create more inflammation. And when I have
Yeah,
inflammation,
but it's also the extent. Like, if you like, I don't eat farm raised fish. That's one thing I can tell you for sure. It's just garbage.
right?
Um, but I'm going to go for a B plus A minus on my diet.
Okay.
And then if these things sneak in here and there, it won't make an impact.
So you can live a little.
So I might go a little wild and have like a bone-in New York steak that was corn-fed here and there.
Right.
But I'm literally, 90% of the time I'm making all the great choices. And then if things sneak in because I'm out in the world, they sneak in.
Who cares?
Right.
How does the eating corn-fed beef versus grass-fed beef affect your like the protein and your building muscle, for example?
So the cool thing with grass-fed is it's leaner. When you look at getting in 1 gram per pound of target body weight, I actually get more than that. I get about 1.5. So I weigh 140 pounds and I'm doing like 160 or more grams of protein a day. I've always been a bigger protein eater. I've always felt better that way.
Uh-huh.
So, when you're eating leaner cuts, it's just easier. Otherwise, just like someone who's plant-based trying to get enough protein, you're going to go overloading on carbs or fat.
Right.
If you're trying to get all your protein from ribeyes, you're going to overload on the fat. So I try to get as lean a protein as possible, and grass-fed, especially grass-fed fillets or New Yorks, are just going to be leaner. Right. So that's where I choose that. And the thing with grass-fed is you get a lot more nutrients. It's a lot more nutrient dense too, with the polyphenols and the iron, et cetera. So better antioxidants, there's omega-3s and CLA. So there's just a lot more good stuff in there versus what you're going to get from corn-fed. And we're eating, like, we forget why we eat. We eat for fuel.
Right.
Right. So,
yep.
and I think the important thing is just go for an A minus on your diet. Go for an A minus, because if you go for an A plus and you don't make it, then you're off the rails. I've just coached so many people. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. And if someone tries to be perfect, you can't be perfect. I've never done anything perfectly in my life. So if you're trying for perfect, then you can't be perfect. So then you just blow it. And then you're like, forget it. And I'll start tomorrow. And that whole silliness starts, right? So make the best choice in the situation that you can. And that's why, when you saw me at Wizard Academy and why I have this stupid elbow injury is we drag all this stuff with us, Right. So we get groceries, we travel with like collagen and protein powder and creatine and electrolytes and essential amino acids and coffee in a coffee maker. Like, we travel with all this stuff so that we have what we need. Because especially when you travel all the time in a TRX, that's my other thing. I travel with a TRX trainer, so I can always get a workout in. Right. When you travel all the time, you got to have your stuff with you, right?
Right. What are the supplements or nutrients that you recommend? Some of your top recommendations for aging powerfully?
I think creatine is the single, of the supplements. So I'm going to give you like the foundational things and then the nice to haves. But I think creatine, honestly, I'm kind of embarrassed because for years I was like, that's, a bro supplement.
Yeah.
And it really actually is more important for women than it is for men. So when you look at getting creatine, our body's going to make, a gram or two a day. We really need probably 5 grams a day for tissue saturation. And, when you're doing more explosive exercise, that's when you're using creatine. But creatine's important for mood. It helps with depression. It helps with brain function. It helps with bone health. It helps with skin health. Like, it's everything. Creatine is amazing. I was just talking to a huge creatine researcher yesterday, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm even more convinced now on creatine. Women have less tissue stores than men, and they're trying to eat more plant-based. Now, when you cook meat, you kill creatine, unfortunately. So unless you're eating rare or raw, you're not really getting a whole lot of creatine. There's a little in fish as well, but it doesn't it doesn't do well with cooking. So I think we all need to be supplementing with creatine every day. Hugely important. Like you look at what happens with sarcopenia and aging and elderly and creatine, like that, it should be mandatory. 40 plus mandatory thing that you take. So creatine's the first one, and there's two forms, monohydrate and HCl. And it was interesting because I've always done monohydrate because all the research is on monohydrate, but I had the conversation with this guy who is all the creatine comes from outside of the country, I think mainly from China, except for this concrete creatine. And it's creatine HCl made in the United States. So I'm actually looking at creating a new formula using this because you need less of it.
Okay.
So creatine's the first one. Second one, kind of the foundational things, vitamin D with K, so D3, K2, fish oil, and magnesium. Like I've yet to find someone who doesn't need those, right? And unless you're eating fish like 5 times a week, wild fish. And I literally had someone DM me, and I'm always amazed at this stuff. They DM me and they said, Dr. Neil Barnard says not to eat fish because it's calorically dense. It's 40% fat. And I go, that's why you would eat it. What am I missing? You're getting all those omega-3s. What is he talking about?
Right.
You know, vegan dude. So I was like, are you kidding? You're going to miss those amazing omega-3s? Hello, we need calories to survive. That's how we fuel. That's how we make ATP. Anyway, so omega-3s, most of us are not going to eat as much fish as we need, and we've got to make sure we're eating clean wild fish. So I think like 2 grams of good omega-3 triglyceride form every day. Vitamin D3 with K dosed on your vitamin D test. So you do a 25 hydroxy vitamin D test. You get yourself to 50 to 80 NGs per ml. By the way, huge for brain, huge for depression, huge for insulin sensitivity. And then magnesium. And magnesium, I like to take magnesium before bed. It can help with sleep, help with recovery. So probably, how much do you need? I'd start most people at about 300 milligrams of a good magnesium, like bisglycinate. So those are my basics. And then from that, I really love collagen. And there's all this hoo-ha about collagen because it's not a complete protein, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, no, it's not. About 70% of your body is collagen, I think. It helps with joints and skin and connective tissue. It's not going to be the big, muscle builder because it doesn't have leucine, but it's definitely something critical to have in there for anti-aging. So I do collagen every day. And then I think most of us would benefit from having a protein powder, especially if you're vegan or plant-based. Right. Having a protein powder can really cover a lot of bases along with an essential amino acid blend. Like, again, as someone's aging, I look at it and go, if we just had protein powder, essential amino acids, and creatine and collagen, we'd cover a lot of issues with all the sarcopenia that we see with people, and these hips breaking. Like, you look at what happens over the age of 60, 65, 1 in 3 people will break a hip. And, 1 in 3 people will never recover from that. I mean,
what's your opinion of essential amino acids versus branched chain amino acids?
You don't want to do the branch. You want to do the essential. The essential have the branch in there.
Okay.
So don't do the branch, do the essential.
What does stress do to someone's health?
Well, there's 2 types of stress, acute and chronic. Acute, our bodies are used to, they can handle acute, right? That's not what we're talking about. Like, you really look at 1,000 years ago, chronic stress, you would have died. Chronic stress would have been an injury, starvation, freezing, and you would have died. Acute stress, you would have survived or died, but you would have gotten through it and gotten stronger. So we're really talking about chronic stress, which is not what our bodies were built for. And, chronic stress of undersleeping, of poor nutrition, which when you really look at the majority of us, we have poor nutrition. We might be overfed, but we're undernourished, not moving enough. So stress is going to do a couple things. First of all, it will start to raise your cortisol and keep it up. initially until you really trash your adrenal glands, and your adrenal glands can't pump out the stress hormones like they used to. So what happens when you're first under that chronic stress is you actually kind of feel like you've got a little main line of caffeine and you feel pretty good. So like back when I used to see a lot of people one-on-one, I'd never get them in the first stages of adrenal exhaustion. Because in those first stages where your cortisols come up now to help you deal with the stress, you're like, wow. And I remember when my son was in the hospital, I felt like I could take on anything. I mean, I was like laser focused. At the end of it, I was like, all right, my son was great. I tested his adrenals coming out of it and I was absolutely destroyed. But chronic stress is going to do a variety of things. Number one, it puts you in a catabolic state where you're breaking down muscle. Very hard to build muscle. It impacts your hormones, especially testosterone and progesterone. So it's lowering, and this is why we're seeing men who testosterone, they should just go through andropause about 57. And it's like, you'll see men with low testosterone in their 30s and 40s due to stress. So it's lowering testosterone in men and women, lowering progesterone in women, impacting sleep. Obviously, it impacts sleep independent of progesterone as well, because it's impacting serotonin and it's impacting dopamine, but impacting serotonin now impacts melatonin. Now we're not getting good sleep. Now we're craving more sugar. It's creating more belly fat potentially because number one, your blood sugar is higher because your body is in a constant state of I need to run away from the tiger or lion. If your blood sugar is higher, it's going to make you more insulin resistant. We also have more cortisol receptors in our belly fat area. So it's going to lay down more fat there, which can lead to more visceral adipose tissue, which is that very dangerous fat that leads to more heart attacks. It makes your gut leakier. And when your gut's leakier, it's one lining, one small thin layer to your immune system. So what happens when your gut's more leaky is, especially when we don't chew well, we have lower stomach acid, and stress lowers stomach acid. You now have food particles going into that lining and triggering an immune response. It can trigger autoimmune issues, it can trigger inflammation, it can trigger food sensitivities. Let's see, did I cover everything? I think those are the main ones.
Great. Love the answer. We're coming up to the end of the hour. Is there anything else that I should have asked you?
And it also triggers all sorts of gut dysbiosis and messes with your gut microbiome. So, but here's the thing. So, since I just gave you all bad about chronic stress, I think that what we have to at least address was, what the heck do you do about that? Right? Uh-huh. So, because I think it's one of the most underrated because it's invisible. And, I remember 20 years ago, I ran a cortisol test on one of the doctors I was working with, and his wife was also a doctor, and she taught at USC Medical School. And when I said, "Oh, it looks like you have adrenal exhaustion, let's do a test," he said, "My wife says that's BS. It's just burnout." I go, we're talking about the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if the cortisol salivary test is accepted yet into, let's look at, is stress a factor? But I think one of the things we tend to miss in our protocol of majoring in the majors is, okay, so we're going to eat protein first, make sure we're getting in those non-starchy vegetables, a little bit of fruit, we're getting in the healthy fats and supplementing. We're going to move more, get those steps in, add resistance training with some power in it, put in some mindful yoga, balance stuff. And then we're going to start to focus on the sleep. But what else in there can we start to do that's going to help with the stress? Now, obviously, exercise helps with stress, but doing some type of mindfulness work in there as well, some meditation, some tapping, some breath work is mission critical. My two biggest regrets in my own health, besides blowing out my knee at 17, thinking I could be a point ballerina at 6 feet tall, my my two other ones, so you can look at that and go, why were you A, trying to be a gymnast, and B, trying to be a point ballerina? Why? They wanted you on the basketball team. Why didn't you just go do that? What were you thinking? But on the health side, I would have started meditation way younger. Like, wouldn't it be cool if meditation was taught in school from elementary school on out? It would have been amazing. It would have been like, start creatine right away. Like, we should all be doing creatine, and, get meditation, get a mindfulness practice, whatever it means for you, on board, like when you're a little kid.
Love it. Well, that brings us to the end of the hour. JJ, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this. I got a lot out of it. Where can people find you?
So jjvirgin.com, and on there, I did a 7-day Eat Protein First challenge. So you can literally go in there, and all it focuses on for 1 week is you eating protein first, getting the right amount in, because what we find when people do that is all of a sudden in 1 week, they've got better energy, less food cravings, they're not hungry. It starts to make a really profound shift. So I like to focus on one thing at a time. So you'll find that at jjvirgin.com.
Awesome. JJ, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. And that's it we've come to the end of our episode.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. See you on the next episode.
If you got value from this video, if you heard what you needed to hear, be sure to like it. Comment if you've got a question or you have something to say. Subscribe to the channel. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism, whatever it may be. So if you or a loved one is struggling and you need some guidance and you need some direction, reach out to us. Our contact information is down below, or you can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, whether it be detox, inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, sober living, recovery coaching, sober companion services, whatever it may be. Like I said, we can either help you or make sure that you get sent in the right direction. We help people all over the country, all over the world for that matter. I'll see you on the next video.